in the twilight of a long-forgotten autumn, when the air turned crisp and the leaves danced like flames in the wind, a young woman stood by the side of an unpaved road, her heart pounding louder than the thrum of hoofbeats in the distance. She was worn and weary, her eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope as she scanned the horizon for any sign of help. With each approaching wagon, she lost herself in the fantasy of a warm meal, a moment's respite, maybe even a glimmer of kindness from a stranger. But the wagon that lumbered into view was none like she had envisioned. It was old, the wooden frame creaking under the weight of rutted plows and weathered tools. Dust swirled around it like ghosts rising after a storm. Yet, desperate times called for desperate measures, and she raised her hand, hoping the driver would stop. The man behind the reins was Jake, a rugged farmer with a face that told stories of hard labor and sleepless nights. His hands bore the scars and calluses of a life spent tilling the unforgiving earth. As he drew near, the lines around his eyes crinkled not with joy but with a weary resignation. He had seen many things on the road, but something about the girl struck him. Maybe it was the way she held herself, a mix of defiance and fragility, like a flame refusing to go out. He called out, his voice gravelly but steady. She nodded, her insides vibrating with a mixture of relief and anxiety. Clambering onto the wagon, she tried to mask her gratitude, hiding behind an aloof smile. She felt like a castaway, finally clinging to a raft. They rode in silence for a spell, the rhythmic creaking of the wagon harmonizing with the whispers of the wind. Little did they know that this brief encounter would alter their destinies in ways neither could fathom. As dusk descended, drenching the sky in deep purples and brilliant oranges, Jake glanced over at her. "Name's Jake," he said, trying to break the tension. "Sarah," she replied, her voice soft as if testing the water. The small talk flowed like the river they passed, meandering and light, masking their unspoken burdens. But as the conversation deepened, the weight of their histories began to surface. Sarah spoke of wandering, of a life that led her from one town to another, a series of misfortunes trailing her like shadows. Jake listened, his heart twanging with empathy. How many times had he felt trapped in a life that didn't fit? How many times had the dreams he held become buried under the weight of responsibilities? He asked suddenly, his voice firm but gentle. She hesitated, her gaze flicking away to the passing landscape. I just need to find something I've lost," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the sounds of the wagon. Jake muttered under his breath, his eyes lingering on the fading horizon. That night, as they set up camp under a sky speckled with stars, something shifted. They shared stories around the flickering fire, finding pieces of themselves in each other's tales. He spoke of a family farm mired in debt, his dreams suffocated by bills, his passion for tilling the soil overshadowed by survival. She listened intently, her heart swelling with understanding. For the first time, he felt seen not merely as a farmer or a provider, but as a man wrestling with his own aspirations. Days turned into weeks. The road became their life, and with each shared journey, they unearthed the weight of aching dreams. Sarah helped him fix fences, while Jake, in turn, taught her to navigate life's simplicity. With every laugh, every tear, they peeled away the layers of their solitude, discovering warmth in their vulnerability. But that warmth was always tinged with uncertainty. Sarah revealed her lingering fears as they lay beneath the stars. "I can't stay," she said one night, tears glistening like the Milky Way above them. "I'm not the one you need. You deserve stability. I'm just..." Jake felt a jolt as her words struck him, an unsettling awareness of the reality looming ahead. He responded, his tone unexpectedly fierce. Those words nestled deep in the cracks of Sarah's heart, giving her pause. Could she let herself belong to something, to someone? The connection they forged carved out space in her soul, filling it with a warmth she thought long extinguished. But as the leaves began to change, so did the rhythm of their journey. With the new season came the urgency of harvest, the buckling pressure of the farm at home, a pressure Jake couldn't ignore. He wrestled with the choice of holding on or letting go. On a particularly chilly morning, as they prepared to continue down the winding road, Jake paused, propping himself up on the wagon. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady but soft, "you've brought something into my life that I thought I lost forever: hope." Her heart sank. Though she had laid her walls bare, she felt them rising again, a fortress built on fear. "I understand. I can keep going." He challenged, his gaze piercing. Her breath caught, uncertainty clouding her mind. He looked at her, searching for the right words. "You don't have to run. I can't promise stability, but you can be part of something real." The sincerity in his voice wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and she felt her defenses crumbling. She had been so afraid of being a burden, of being unworthy. Yet through the shadows of doubt, hope flickered anew. I don't know if I can," she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. "Then let me help you," he urged, leaning closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stay with me." It was a leap into the abyss, one that felt terrifying yet exhilarating. As she processed his words, clarity began to pierce through her fog. She could feel the weight of potential pressing heavily on her chest. Could her arrival in his life be a catalyst for change? Not just for him, but for her too. Days turned into heart-pounding moments laden with the choices they made together. As they plowed through fields, grew closer, and planned for the future, they forged a relationship blooming with possibilities. Jake began to dream again, envisioning a farm thriving with life, not just crops, but warmth, laughter, and companionship. He offered stability, while she brought a spark he didn't know he needed. Yet, as with all good things, uncertainty still lingered. Would they have the strength to push through the storms that loomed on the horizon? Doubts echoed as harvest season came and went, and the world around them shifted under the weight of aspirations. Challenges piled up, and there were times when Sarah feared she was becoming the very burden she sought to avoid. One night, as the stars began to fade into the morning light, uncertainty washed over them. They found themselves in an argument, the weight of unspoken fears crackling like a live wire between them. Jake shouted, frustration spilling over like the corn they hadn't harvested. Sarah retorted, passion igniting her voice. The silence felt deafening, the weight of their emotions pinning them down. Breaking through the thick tension, Jake stepped closer, his gaze fierce but soft. "Whatever happens, know that you have changed my life forever." In that moment, the true weight of his words smashed through the walls that had kept her tethered to fear. She realized she wasn't just changing his life, he was changing hers too. From that day on, they began to weave their lives together, brick by brick, idea by idea. They laughed, cried, and stumbled together, intertwined in a dance of love and understanding. It was imperfect, messy, but real. The farm transformed into a sanctuary of hope, echoed by the rhythms of their lives blending into something beautiful. Together, they turned hard soil into vibrant crops, carved out dreams that shimmered against the all-consuming darkness, and ignited a love that seemed to illuminate their path. Years later, as they stood side by side, watching their children play in the fields they had nurtured together, they recognized a truth that had previously eluded them. Sometimes, life doesn't just change with big gestures or grand declarations. Sometimes, it shifts with the simple act of stopping to pick someone up and embarking on a journey that neither of them could foresee. The sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. Dust swirled in the golden light, creating a dreamlike haze over the rugged dirt road. A sound echoed in the distance, the rhythmic clatter of hooves on hardened earth. Standing on the roadside, a young woman with wild hair and worn boots squinted against the sun. Her heart raced, and she felt a cocktail of anticipation and desperation surge through her veins. She hadn't intended to be here, yet life had twisted and turned her in ways she could never have predicted. Now, all she wanted was to escape the shadows of her past. As the wagon drew closer, her heart skipped. It was a simple wooden cart pulled by an old mule. Its frame creaked under the weight of hay bales piled precariously high. The driver, a rugged man with a weathered face and a beard flecked with gray, looked weary yet kind. A spark of hope ignited in her chest. Raising a hand, she hoped to flag him down. The man eyed her for a moment, curiosity flickering in his deep-set eyes. He pulled the reins, and with a soft clatter, the wagon slowed to a halt. His voice was deep and warm, wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. "Yes, please," she replied, breathless with relief as she climbed onto the wagon, dust swirling up around her. As she settled onto the hay bales, she felt an unexpected flutter of safety, a refuge from the storm that had plagued her heart. "Name's Tom," the man said, glancing over his shoulder. "Leela," she answered, a hint of a smile creeping onto her lips. They began to roll down the road, the soft shuffle of the mule keeping time with the clinking of metal from the wagon. The countryside unfolded around them, golden fields kissed by the setting sun, rolling hills stretching towards an endless sky. Leela inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her worries lift ever so slightly. Tom asked, his eyes fixed ahead. "Just away," she admitted, her voice growing quiet. Deep down, she didn't want to reveal the truth that she was running from a past she couldn't shake. He asked, his tone gentle but probing. She hesitated, but the warmth of his sincerity coaxed her into sharing. "I made some mistakes, hurt people I loved." Tom nodded slowly, digesting her words as if they were grains of a sad, heavy truth. "We all carry shadows, Leela." A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken understanding. As twilight crept in, their conversation flowed like water, raw and real. Tom shared bits of his own story. Years spent farming a small plot of land, dreaming of a life bigger than the horizon he faced. A wife lost to illness, leaving him to navigate the world alone, the weight of responsibilities pressing on his shoulders. When darkness enveloped the skies, the stars began to twinkle like scattered diamonds above. Leela felt herself relax, as if a thread connecting her heart to a painful past had finally begun to fray. They stopped for the night in a clearing, the wagon creaking as Tom set up a small campfire. The aroma of warm beans simmering filled the air, grounding them further. Leela's stomach growled, and she felt lighter just being there, lost between the cracks of what she was and what she might become. She ventured softly as they ate under the stars. Tom's expression shifted, sadness eclipsing his warmth. "She was sick for a long time, watched her fade away like the last leaves in fall, and I promised to always be there for her." Leela's heart clenched at his honesty. She could see the pain etched into his features, a reminder of the fragility of life. "I'm sorry," she whispered, biting her lip. The flickering flames illuminated their faces, creating shadows that danced around them. "I try to keep going, but sometimes it feels like I'm just surviving. Like I'm a ghost wandering through my own life," Tom confessed, his voice thick with emotion. Leela felt an awakening within her. For the first time, she wasn't just running, she wanted to understand, to connect. "You're not alone, Tom." As the fire crackled, they began to share more intimate fragments of their lives, small pieces that revealed fears, hopes, and dreams. The shadows that had bound them began to ripple, lifting ever so slightly. Days turned into weeks, and the journey they shared morphed into a partnership of sorts, bound by the frailty of their histories. The laughter and shared burdens painted colors on the gray canvas of their lives as they began to heal slowly, piece by piece. But with every step forward, echoes of doubt still lingered. Leela began to notice the way Tom would look off into the distance, lost in thought. She could sense the heaviness of his world lingering, like a storm cloud waiting to unleash its fury. One evening, as the sun dipped down low, casting fiery rays through the swaying trees, Leela could no longer hold back her worries. She asked gently, sensing the tension that simmered just below the surface. Tom sat in silence for a moment, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Finally, he sighed, looking down at the dirt. "I've got a farm to run, Leela, bills to pay. I thought maybe you could stay with me for a while, help out. But what if this is all just a fleeting moment in time for you?" Panic bubbled within her as she processed his fears. "I'm not running anymore, Tom. I want to be here, with you," she insisted, but doubt clawed at her. Had she truly found a place in this rugged life? Tom looked up, his expression revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "You might feel that now, but what if you wake up one day and realize you've outgrown me?" The truth in his words felt like a punch to her gut. She couldn't promise forever, but she also knew she couldn't go back. "I've been running from the shadows all my life, but it was you who stopped me in my tracks, you who made me face them," she replied, her voice steady, though underneath she felt anything but. But the fear in Tom's eyes mirrored her own doubts, and they both found themselves wrapped in a cocoon of uncertainty. Weeks turned into tension-laden silence, the nights filled with unspoken fears that hung thick in the air. They both wrestled with their ghosts, yearning to connect yet haunted by the fears of the past. Their daily routine transformed from an easy camaraderie to careful steps, as if they were navigating a tightrope strung above churning waters. Leela worked diligently alongside Tom, planting seeds and tending to the fields, feeling a sense of purpose take root in the soil beneath her feet. But still, a chasm lay between them, growing deeper each day. The turning point came one stormy night as thunder rumbled, splitting the sky apart. Rain lashed at the windows, and Leela found herself pacing, frustration boiling over. "We can't keep pretending everything's fine." Tom's eyes darkened, his shoulders tense. "You don't understand the kind of pain I've carried. What if I let you in and you end up leaving?" Her heart ached for him. "But I'm not her. You can't keep running from your past." His gaze softened, and something in the air shifted. As they stared deeply into each other's eyes, the weight of what had been built between them began to break. He asked quietly, vulnerability creeping into his voice. A flicker of hope sparked deep within her. "Let's try." That night, the energy crackling in the room shifted. They began talking, not just the surface-level conversations about crops or storms, but about every scar and shadow they had carried. They laid bare their fears, their hopes, their dreams. Days passed, the storm clouds came and went, but their hearts began to unearth long-dormant seeds of trust. Leela found herself integrating into the rhythms of the farm, taking on responsibilities she had once only dreamed of. She helped create a garden bursting with life that mirrored her vibrant spirit. As they laid those roots together, they built a new foundation on shared fears and triumphs. Leela discovered strength in stability, while Tom began to let go of the heavy chains holding him down. As the seasons changed, so too did they. What had started as a chance encounter grew into an unbreakable bond, knitting their lives together like the threads of a tapestry. The shadows that had once loomed over them like dark clouds began to dissipate. Through their shared laughter and tears, they carved out a life that felt vibrant and alive. Together, they embraced each other for their flaws, learning that love sometimes means holding hands through the storms. Tom and Leela had both set out on roads riddled with uncertainty, yet together, they forged a path bathed in possibility. Their lives intertwined, no longer defined by their pasts, but by the dreams they were chasing side by side. And sometimes all it took was a hitch in their journey, a chance for two souls once fragmented to unite, finding strength in vulnerability and changing each other's lives forever. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows on the dirt road. As the last light of day slipped away, a young woman stood by the roadside, heart racing. She squinted down the path, feeling the weight of dust and weariness settle onto her shoulders. Her thumb was out, signaling to a world that felt increasingly indifferent. But today, she hoped for a miracle. Suddenly, the sound of clattering wheels broke the stillness. A wagon drawn by a sturdy brown horse rounded the bend, dust swirling in its wake. The driver sat tall, a rough-hewn man with a face lined by years of hard labor. His weary eyes scanned the road, and something within him flickered at the sight of her. He called out, his voice gruff but not unkind. She nodded eagerly, stepping onto the wagon as if climbing onto a lifeline. In that moment, the weight she had been carrying felt a little lighter. "I'm Sarah," she said, breathlessly grateful. "Jake," he replied, briefly glancing back. He cracked the reins, and the horse picked up speed. The wagon creaked as it gained momentum, and the air filled with the earthy scent of the road. As they rolled along, the landscape around them shifted from dense woods to sprawling fields. With each bump of the wagon, Sarah felt her pulse steady. She listened to the soft rhythm of hooves, each beat echoing a promise of possibility. Jake asked after a stretch of silence, his curiosity piqued. "Just a way," Sarah said, her voice small but firm. The truth was buried deep, hidden beneath layers of fear and regret. She didn't want to scare him off with her burdens. A thoughtful silence settled over them. Jake sensed there was much more to her story, but chose to let her speak when she was ready. The wagon rattled on, the evening air cool against their skin. After a time, Sarah glanced at him, catching a glimpse of his own weariness. "And you?" Jake sighed, the weight of his own life evident in his posture. "Just a farmer trying to keep the land afloat. Lost my family and..." His voice cracked slightly, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability he'd kept hidden. She asked softly, her eyes searching his for answers. A bad crop season, loan sharks breathing down our necks. He paused, allowing the words to hang heavy in the air. Sarah felt a pang of understanding wash over her. I thought running would help, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they came to a halt at a scenic overlook. The world stretched out before them, a vast valley painted with hues of purple and orange. Jake set the brake and climbed down, motioning for Sarah to join him. They stood side by side, watching the colors bleed into the landscape. Sometimes I forget to look, Jake said, a hint of sorrow woven into his words. I understand, Sarah replied, her heart swelling with empathy. In that moment, something shifted between them. They were two souls carrying the weight of their pasts, and yet in the vastness of the evening they found a flicker of hope. Days passed as they traveled together, the road becoming a tapestry of shared moments. They began to laugh, their conversations flowing freely, connecting over shared stories of heartache and loss. Each laugh felt like a whisper of healing in a world that had been silent for too long. But shadows lurked in each of their minds, whispering doubts. Sarah couldn't shake the fear that she was dragging Jake into a deep pit of despair. Meanwhile, Jake wrestled with his own anxieties, questioning whether he could afford to let someone in again. Jake asked one night as they settled by the campfire, shadows dancing around them. Believe me, I've thought about it, Sarah replied, her voice steady. But something about this feels right. The words hung between them, thick with the promise of what could be. But the weight of their realities pressed down, creating an unspoken tension. One evening, as a storm rolled in, dark clouds gathering in the sky, the temperamental winds whispered warnings they could both feel. Just as they began to set up camp, the first raindrop fell soft at first, like a gentle nudge, then transforming into a downpour. The two hurriedly scrambled to set up shelter, their hearts racing under the storm's fury. In the chaos, Jake caught her eye. "We can ride this out together," he half-shouted over the sound of the pounding rain, his voice tinged with urgency. She called back, her heart racing. But as they huddled under the makeshift shelter, the intensity grew not just from the storm, but from the swirling emotions pent up inside them. The heaviness of their shared grief collided with a burgeoning affection neither knew how to address. "Sarah," Jake said, voice lowered to a whisper as the rain continued its relentless assault. "Maybe." She turned to face him, their eyes locking. With a powerful intensity, he reached for her hand, their fingers interlocking. "I don't want to lose another person, Sarah." His confession shattered the tension. Their hands held the weight of raw vulnerability. "Then let's promise," she said, her voice firm. The storm raged on, but in that moment they forged a pact that would bind them in ways neither could have imagined. As the rain poured down, they drew close, sheltering themselves not just from the elements but from the fears of the past. In the tempest, they dared to hope. With dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the world painted anew. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating their path ahead. They embarked on their journey, but the landscape now felt different. Each bend in the road whispered of new beginnings waiting just around the corner. Their connection deepened. They shared stories of their dreams, the pieces of themselves they were willing to explore. Sarah spoke of wanting to create a community, a place where people could heal together. Jake listened, captivated, thinking of how he could build a life not just for himself, but for others too. "Imagine a farm where families can come together," Sarah mused one evening, excitement dancing in her eyes. Jake's heart raced with possibilities he hadn't dared to entertain. "That sounds amazing," he said, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and fear. "I don't know," Sarah chuckled, the sound brightening the space between them. "But we can figure it out." As weeks passed, they began to plant more than just crops. They planted seeds of hope and possibility. Jake taught Sarah the intricacies of farming, and she brought life to his solitary existence with laughter and warmth. They transformed the land gradually, feeding not only the soil but their growing connection. Yet as they toiled side by side, the fear of their separate pasts still shadowed their progress. One day, while they harvested a field of corn, Jake's thoughts blurred with old memories, the weight of those lost haunting him. He stopped, dropping the basket to the ground. Sarah asked, her voice filled with concern. "I can't shake this feeling," he admitted, his voice laced with worry. "What if I'm not enough?" Sarah stepped closer, determined to lift the weight off his shoulders. "You are enough, Jake. You've already changed my life." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken emotions. Jake looked into her eyes, feeling the flickers of hope flame anew in his heart. "I don't want to drag you down into my darkness," he confessed, vulnerability cracking his exterior. "But that's not what I'm afraid of," she replied, placing a hand on his arm. "I'm afraid of losing what we've built together." They spent the evening rebuilding what had cracked, expressing their fears, hopes, and the life they envisioned together. With each word shared, they felt lighter, and the connection between them grew even stronger. Months slipped by, each day weaving them tighter into the fabric of a life they had crafted together. The farm came alive with the spirit of community, food flourishing under their care. More people began to show up, drawn by the warmth of their endeavors, eager for connection and a fresh start. Looking out at a gathering of friends and families around a bonfire one night, Sarah felt a swell of emotion overwhelm her. "We did this," she whispered to Jake, her eyes sparkling with joy. He wrapped an arm around her, feeling the glow from the fire illuminate their path. "More than we ever dreamed," he said, pride swelling in his heart. But just as life began to feel secure, a chilling wind whispered through the fields. The specters of the past weren't finished with them yet. One morning, a letter arrived. As Jake opened it, his heart sank. The debts of the past he thought were buried began to resurface, threatening to rip apart the newfound stability they had created. Sarah asked, eyes wide with concern. "It's a notice from the bank," Jake's voice trembled. Fear wrapped around them both, a reminder of the chasms they thought they had overcome. Jake's anxiety bubbled over. "I can't fail again, Sarah. I can't lose this." But in that moment, Sarah stepped forward, refusing to let despair consume them. "Together, remember, we faced storms before, we can do it again." She felt the fire within her rise, urging him to fight. "We'll gather the community. They believe in us. They'll support us." With her courage flowing through him, Jake found a spark of hope flickering in his chest. "All right," he replied, determination creeping back into his voice. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly, rallying their friends and community. They held meetings filled with laughter and aspirations, laying plans that echoed with promises of resilience. Through bakeries and farm stands, the ripples of their challenge spread, igniting an unbreakable bond within the community. Each person contributed their skills baking bread, sewing quilts, planting flowers, pouring out their love and support in ways that touched the very essence of the land itself. As they stood together at the grand community market day, the outpouring of love and support fueled their resolve. The fruits of their labor became more than just produce. They turned into symbols of hope, unity, and strength. When the final tally was counted, they had raised more than enough to secure their future, the burden of the past lifted as surely as the sun rises each day. "That was incredible," Jake breathed, awe shining in his eyes as he surveyed the almost magical scene unfolding around them. Sarah smiled, pride blossoming like the flowers blooming in the field. "It's just the beginning, Jake." He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. "I never thought I could feel this way again." "And you changed everything for me," she replied, light shimmering in her gaze. In that moment, Jake understood that their lives had forever been altered not simply by the tempest of their pasts, but by the choice they had made to confront them together. It wasn't just about healing from their scars. It was about finding the strength to build a new future. Standing amidst the thriving community that surrounded them, Jake and Sarah felt the overwhelming power of love binding them into something more significant than either had anticipated. Together, they were no longer fleeing shadows. They were guiding lights. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the fields, they held tightly to each other, ready to face whatever new chapters lay ahead. In a world where they once felt lost, they had truly found home. And it all began with a simple wish for a ride on a dusty wagon, transforming into a journey that would forever change their lives. A lone figure stood by the side of a dirt road, the world around her simmering under the heat of the afternoon sun. Her clothes were tattered, hair wild and unkempt, and as she squinted into the distance, she felt invisible against the vast landscape stretching before her. Desperation clawed at her chest. She didn't just need a ride, she needed a lifeline. The sound of creaking wood and heavy thuds broke the silence. A worn-out wagon, drawn by a tired horse, rumbled into view. The driver, a rugged man with a face that mirrored the lines of hard work and heartache, looked ahead without really seeing. But when he spotted her, a flicker of curiosity sparked in his eyes. He called out, slowing the wagon to a halt. She exclaimed, heart racing with a mix of relief and apprehension. The wheels of fortune felt like they had just begun to turn. "Name's Tom," he said as she climbed aboard, her heart pounding like a drum. "Leela," she replied, managing a smile that felt foreign, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Tom cracked the reins and the horse trudged forward, the wagon rolling steadily down the path. As the landscape flowed by rolling hills and sprawling fields kissed by the sun, Leela felt the weight of her troubles lift ever so slightly. It was a temporary escape, but revelatory nonetheless. Tom asked, casting a sideways glance at her. "Away from everything," she replied, forcing herself to keep the conversation light. Tom furrowed his brow but chose not to press. Instead, they rode in a comfortable silence, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels soothing Leela's restless heart. She watched the scenery unfold, wildflowers swaying in the breeze, the golden fields stretching endlessly before them. Tom broke the silence first. "You must have a story." Leela hesitated. A part of her wanted to share, to let him in on the tumult swirling within her, but distrust lingered. "I made some mistakes," she admitted finally, cringing at the vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Messy's part of life," he replied, nodding. That simple statement wrapped around Leela like a comforting blanket. She glanced at his weathered hands gripping the reins, imagining the burdens they had borne. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. As dusk began to blanket the sky in hues of pink and orange, Tom guided the wagon to a stop by the edge of a tranquil river. "Let's take a break," he said, stepping down. Leela followed suit, her senses alive with the scents of wildflowers and warm earth. They sat by the river, water sparkling like jewels under the waning sun. Leela dipped her toes into the cool water, closing her eyes. For a brief moment, she felt like a child again, free from the heaviness of adulthood. "What about you, Tom?" she asked, her curiosity finally getting the better of her. Tom sighed, staring across the river as if searching for answers in its depths. "I had a family once. A wife and a little girl. Lost them a few years back. Just." His voice was heavy with regret, and Leela could sense the vulnerability behind his gruff exterior. Her heart ached in empathy. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. The silence that followed was thick, filled with their unshared burdens. It was the kind of moment that can only arise between two souls navigating the aftermath of pain. As night fell, they set up camp. The crackle of the fire echoed against the surrounding stillness, and Leela learned to let her guard down. They shared a simple meal of bread and beans, laughter rising in the air like smoke. The warmth of the flames flickered off Tom's weather-beaten face, revealing the strength that lay hidden behind the surface. "You're a good cook," she teased, the banter easing the tension. Tom chuckled, a sound rich with life. But beneath the laughter lay an undercurrent of tension. Leela's thoughts drifted back to everything she was running from, the sleepless nights, the regrets, the desperate attempts to escape memories that felt like chains. Yet with Tom, she began to feel a flicker of something else, hope. As the fire died down and they settled into their sleeping bags, Leela's mind raced. She could feel Tom's presence beside her, the warmth of another person pushing away the shadows that had haunted her. Days turned into weeks. Their journey continued, weaving through picturesque towns and vast fields where the sunsets felt like paintings across a canvas. Leela found herself drawn into Tom's life, cooking together, laughing over shared stories, and feeling the stirrings of something she hadn't expected: companionship. But old habits die hard. Each night, glimpses of her past, the mistakes she'd made, the pain she'd caused, replayed in her mind like a broken record. What if she wasn't worthy of this peace? What if Tom discovered who she really was? One evening, as they camped under a sprawling sky of stars, Leela turned to Tom. "I try not to," he admitted. She hesitated, weighing her words. Tom looked at her, searching her expression. "You think it's possible," she replied, emboldened. His expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. "You might change your mind." Her heart raced. "Is that all you think about me?" "No, that's not what I meant," he said quickly. "You're not holding me back," she countered, her voice strong. As tension simmered beneath the surface, the road continued to unfurl before them, a ribbon of possibilities and paths not yet taken. And as they traveled, Leela began to realize the depth of her feelings for Tom. He wasn't just a chapter, he was becoming her story. With each passing day, they found strength in the mundane, healing the old wounds that had threatened to define them. Together, they planted seeds both in the ground and within each other, nourished by laughter, companionship, and a quiet understanding that even the heaviest loads could feel lighter when shared. But just as things seemed to settle into a rhythm, the past crashed back in, uninvited. One day, they arrived in a small town, and when Leela stepped into a local diner to get a cup of coffee, she ran into someone she hoped to never see again, her ex-boyfriend, Mark. She froze, the world around her fading to a blur. He stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, smirking like he owned the very place she had hoped to escape. "What a surprise, Leela. Look who," he began, but the words fell flat as his smile faltered. "Just passing through," she stammered, the old fears bubbling back to the surface. "Right." He shot back, the cruelty in his tone sending a chill through her. "Leave her alone," Tom's voice rang out as he stepped into the diner, his eyes narrowing at Mark. She felt a warmth in his words, a protective instinct igniting the fire inside her. Heat rushed to her cheeks as she caught the way Tom's strong presence seemed to fill the space, creating a buffer against the darkness of her past. "Tom, it's okay," she whispered, trying to diffuse the tension. But it wasn't okay. Mark's eyes flicked between them, assessing, judging. He taunted, but in the face of Tom's unwavering gaze, Mark began to back down, sensing the strength rising around them. Tom stepped closer, his voice low and unwavering. "She's building a new life." As Mark's bravado faltered, Leela felt a rush of clarity. The words that had once sunk deep into her soul began to dissolve away, replaced by the tremors of empowerment. In that moment, she wasn't just running, she was reclaiming her narrative. With Tom by her side, she understood that they both could shove off the weight of the past and choose to embrace the life that lay before them, unshackled from the chains that once bound them. When they left the diner, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow on their path. They climbed back onto the wagon, and as they rolled away from the town, Leela felt lighter than she had in years. "Thank you," she said, her voice hardly above a whisper. Tom glanced at her, concern etched in his features. "I am." Days turned into months, and with each mile traveled, they forged a bond that felt both fragile and fierce. It was a tightly woven tapestry of shared joys and dreams, spurred on by a relentless willingness to confront the shadows of their pasts together. They settled in a small but welcoming town, where the community felt alive with potential. Under the expansive skies, they began to cultivate a life. The field stretched before them, rich with promise, the backdrop for the love that was blossoming in tandem with their crops. But not just crops, they began to build a community, a sanctuary for others searching for second chances. They envisioned a farm where laughter echoed off the walls of a new home, where the burdens they once bore could transform into hopeful beginnings for others. Through hard work, commitment, and heart, they created a space for healing. People came to share stories, to help out, and to find solace in the thriving life blooming around them. And as the first harvest came in, sat together in the glow of twilight, Leela looked at Tom, gratitude swelling in her heart. "We did this," she said breathlessly. He reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "No, we didn't just do this. We built this together." The world around them felt like a testament to their perseverance, the triumph of love over loss. In that moment, surrounded only by the warmth of the harvest and the laughter of friends, they understood a profound truth. Every choice leading to this moment had led them not just to one another, but to redemption. As days turned into seasons, Leela and Tom watched their dreams unfurl in ways they had never imagined. Together they created a sanctuary, safe and vibrant, reminding everyone, including themselves, that love can blossom even amidst the shadows of the past. And it all started with a simple ride on a wagon, an unplanned encounter that transformed two wandering souls into a community, into a life they never dared hope for. In the hearts of those they gathered, they found healing, laughter, and a future built hand in hand. They learned that sometimes, life's most unexpected turns can lead you precisely where you're meant to be. The sound of hooves thumping against hard-packed dirt echoed through the quiet landscape as the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep hues of orange and purple. Alongside the winding road stood a young woman, hair tousled by the wind and eyes scanning the horizon. The weight of the world rested on her shoulders, and her heart raced with desperate hope. She had been traveling for days, nothing but a knapsack slung over her shoulder and a few coins to her name. As she squinted into the twilight, she spotted it, a wooden wagon rolling toward her, drawn by a strong brown horse. The driver looked rough around the edges, his face lined with the sun and the hard work of farm life. He was the kind of man you'd expect to find planting seeds or mending fences, not whisking away a lost soul on the road. Lifting her thumb, she felt a wave of anxiety. Would he stop? Would kindness break through the weariness of his world? Just as doubt began to creep in, the wagon slowed and the driver pulled the reins. He called out, his voice surprisingly warm. She shouted back, her pulse quickening with relief. Clambering up onto the wagon felt like climbing onto a ship sailing away from the storm. "Name's Jake," he said, glancing sideways. "Leela," she responded, her voice alight with gratitude as they began to roll forward. As they traveled, the landscape unfolded like a storybook, winding rivers and distant hills bathed in the soft glow of sunset. There was comfort in the rhythm of the wagon wheels, and for a moment, the burdens of Leela's past faded into the background. Jake asked after a stretch of silence, sparking a small flame of curiosity in him. "Away from everything," she admitted, the heaviness in her voice not lost on him. She hesitated, caught off guard by the intensity of his question. The memories rushed in, shadows from a life once lived. "Something like that," she finally said, forcing a smile. He didn't press her further, though Leela could sense the empathy simmering beneath his rough exterior. They rode in silence for a time, sharing the space between them, both wrestling with their individual struggles that felt like ghosts in the rustling leaves. As twilight enveloped them, they reached a small clearing beside the river. Jake pulled over, hopping down to let Leela step carefully to the ground. "Let's take a break." Leela smiled, grateful for the chance to stretch her legs and feel the grass beneath her feet. The gentle lapping of the water called to her, and she walked to the riverbank, dipping her toes into the cool water. Closing her eyes, she let the moment wash over her. Escape felt so close she could almost taste it. "We're like leaves being carried by the wind," Jake said, joining her. "Yeah," Leela agreed, glancing at him. He looked deeply into her eyes as if trying to decipher the sadness layered behind her words. "Maybe, but every leaf has its season." They shared stories, weaving laughter and revelations into the fabric of the darkening night. Jake opened up about his farm, the struggles with debt, and the haunting memories of losing his family. Leela felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't quite understand. He was a wounded bird just like her. In the flickering firelight, Leela felt a connection growing, fragile yet undeniable. "I've made mistakes," she confessed, her heart pounding. "I've hurt people I loved." "I get it," he replied softly. "It's hard to outrun the shadows, but we can't let them control us." As they huddled around the warmth of the fire, a sense of belonging settled over them, like a soft blanket on a chilly night. It was a feeling Leela had almost forgotten, a soothing balm for her troubled soul. Days melted into one another as they traveled, each moment stitched together with laughter and shared burdens. Each sunrise marked a new beginning, and every sunset painted the sky with hope. Leela felt the cracks in her heart begin to mend, and she found herself trusting Jake more with each passing mile. But beneath the surface, fear lingered like a storm cloud. What if he learned the truth about her past? What if he saw the darkness that lingered behind her eyes? One evening, they camped under a blanket of stars. Leela watched the constellations twinkling above, her heart full but tethered to a fear she couldn't shake. She asked, breaking the silence. Jake nodded, staring off into the distance. "Yeah, I'm afraid all the time." She felt a twinge in her chest. What if this is all temporary? He turned to her sharply, his brow furrowed. "You're not just passing through, Leela. Don't sell yourself short. You've brought something into my life I thought I lost." Her heart soared and shattered all at once. "I don't want to lose you either," she whispered, her voice trembling. The tension cracked like a brittle branch breaking in the wind. They stood together in the heart of uncertainty, the fear palpable in the cool night air. Every day that followed felt like a delicate dance between their growing affection and the shadows lurking in their minds. As they worked side by side to patch up the old wagon and prepare meals, Leela felt both lighter and weighed down, her heart swelling, but terrified that it could be crushed at any moment. Then came a chance encounter that would change everything. They stopped at a small town for supplies, and while Leela was picking out vegetables, she spotted a familiar face, her old friend Mia. Panic surged through her as she ducked behind a rack of produce, her heart racing. "Mia," she breathed, her hands trembling. The very last person she wanted to run into. Mia. She turned to see Mia's smile, bright and genuine, and for a moment all Leela could feel was betrayal. Everything came crashing back in waves, guilt for how she had treated Mia, shame for running away. Mia asked, tilting her head, confusion etched across her face. "I've just been traveling," Leela responded, forcing a smile. She was about to escape when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Jake was right behind her, concern stamping his features. Mia's eyes flicked between them, realization dawning. "Leela, is this your companion?" The word felt like a weight pressing down, and Leela felt the heat rise to her cheeks. "Yeah, we're just traveling together," she stammered, pulling away slightly. Mia narrowed her eyes, sensing the tension that hung in the air. "You're different, Leela. You don't have to run anymore." The word *home hung heavily in the air, its resonance striking deep within Leela. She felt Jake's eyes on her, asking silently what she wanted. Would she ever really be able to return, or had the road changed her too much? "I can't go back," she said finally, her voice steady. "Not now." Mia reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "You're stronger than you think." As she left, Leela felt an odd mix of sadness and clarity swirling inside her. The encounter with Mia cracked open a door she thought was sealed shut, and in that moment she realized how far she had come, but also how far she had left to go. When they made it back to the wagon, Leela turned to Jake, her heart racing. I saw someone I knew and she brought up my past. It scared me," she admitted. Jake stepped closer, the warmth in his gaze softening the edges of her fears. "Whatever you've done, it doesn't define who you are now." The sincerity in his eyes ignited a spark within her. In that moment, something started to shift. She and Jake began to share not just the laughter and joy, but deeper fears and aspirations. They planted seeds of hope together, breaking boundaries like walls slowly crumbling away. As they pressed forward, Leela found herself intertwining her dreams with Jake's. "I want to create something," she declared one night by the fire. He smiled, a glimmer of admiration shining through. "A safe haven. I never thought I could hope for something like this, but being with you." With each passing day, the wagon became a vessel of their dreams. They built plans rooted in the fertile soil of their shared journey. Through the hardships, they discovered strength wrapped in vulnerability, the miles piling up with laughter, tears, and resilience. But as the stakes grew higher, so did their fears. One night, a storm rolled in, the wind howling as rain pelted the earth. They huddled close under the shelter of the wagon, the raw power outside mirroring the tempest inside them. "I don't want to be a burden," Leela admitted, her voice cracking. Jake turned to her, his expression a mix of fierceness and tenderness. "You're not a burden, Leela, you're a partner." And just like that, something shifted in the air. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving together. As thunder rumbled overhead, they leaned closer and Jake drew her into his arms. "Let's face whatever comes next together." With unspoken promises thickening the air between them, they began to weave something deeper than either could have imagined: need, desire, hope, transforming what had started as a hitchhike on a wagon into a journey of the heart. As they continued their travels, Leela felt light, as though every mile taken was a step closer to a dream becoming reality. Together, they began to gather more than just supplies. They gathered the pieces of their lives, each step a brick laid down in the hope of building something magnificent. When they reached a small valley after weeks on the road, something magical caught their eyes, a piece of land bathed in sunlight, rich and wild, waiting for someone to breathe life into it. "This is it," Leela breathed, her heart racing. Jake turned to her, the warmth of excitement reflected in his eyes. Together, she confirmed, the words settling like a promise between them. They worked tirelessly to cultivate the land, planting seeds not just in the soil but also in their hearts. With every crop that grew and every tree that took root, they felt the past fading like distant thunder. Summer turned into fall and fall into winter, and with each season, the community began to unfold. Neighbors came to lend a hand, drawn in by the vision that Leela and Jake had conjured together. They shared meals and laughter, weaving an intricate tapestry of friendship and resilience. But their pasts would not be ignored. One frosty morning, while the fog hung low over the land, a letter arrived addressed to Leela, her old life pulling at her like a shadow resurfacing. Heart pounding, she opened it, her breath hitching as she read the words. It was a notice from someone back home, a reminder of the debts she had tried to escape, the mistakes she had tried to leave behind. Jake watched her expression shift from calm to storm in an instant. He asked, concern etched on his face. I thought I could run forever, but they found me, she whispered, tears prickling at the edges of her eyes. Leela, you don't have to face this alone, he urged, stepping closer. She looked up, vulnerability wrapping around her like a blanket. But what if they take everything away? Then we fight for it, he replied, his voice steady. Whatever it takes. As she cupped his hand, energy surged between them, a comfort igniting within her. Together, they began to rally their friends and community, standing up to the ghosts that threatened to haunt them. And as the days turned into a blur of determination and unity, something miraculous happened. Leela discovered the power of shared burdens. The weight felt lighter when borne together. The embrace of friendship filled the spaces left by pain. Through fundraisers and community gatherings, they fought back against her past, reclaiming the narrative. Bit by bit, they built something stronger than fear, hope, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of the human heart. Standing among their friends one night, surrounded by laughter and light, Leela felt the darkness recede. With Jake by her side, she understood that love could tether her to the present, illuminating her path. Whatever happens, she said, her voice trembling with emotion, I'm ready to face it. Jake smiled, eyes shining under the stars. In that moment, they both understood the journey hadn't just been about escaping their pasts. It had become about building a future and learning that sometimes the most unexpected ride can lead to an extraordinary life. As the moon rose high, silvering the field spread before them, Leela and Jake stood hand in hand, knowing they had changed each other's lives in ways neither could have foreseen. Through love, resilience, and the shared cadence of their hearts, they had found a home that would always welcome them back, a sanctuary forged not just in land but in spirit. And it all started with a simple hitch on a wagon. The sun hung dangerously low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty road, where a young woman stood, heart pounding. Her eyes were filled with desperation as she waved her thumb, hoping for a miracle. She had spent nights under the stars, her meager belongings strapped to her back, and the weight of her past clung to her like an unwelcome shadow. As a young man approached, driving a weathered wagon, he shifted in his seat, his face etched with fatigue but hardened by purpose. Jake, a farmer struggling to make ends meet, had seen plenty of faces on this road, but something in her struck a chord deep within him. This woman, wild-eyed and determined, was searching for something escape, relief, solace. He asked, slowing the wagon down, his voice gruff yet filled with a hint of kindness. Yes, she exclaimed, moving toward the wagon, her heart racing with hope. Name's Jake, he said as she climbed on board, sweat glistening on her brow. Leela, she replied, a flicker of relief dancing across her features. Little did they both know that this simple encounter would alter the course of their lives forever. As they set off, the thudding rhythm of the horses' hooves was almost a reassuring lullaby. The landscape rolled by, golden fields brushing against the fading light, and Leela felt an unfamiliar sense of safety as she settled in beside him. Jake asked, glancing sideways. Away from everything, she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. It was a vague answer, but she wasn't prepared to share her story just yet. He inquired, his eyes piercing through her guarded demeanor. More like someone, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake nodded as if he understood. "We all have our ghosts," he said after a moment. The weight of his words hung in the air, giving her a glimpse into the man he might be beneath the rugged exterior. The sun sank lower, igniting the sky in hues of pink and orange, when they pulled to a stop by a winding river, the water glistening like diamonds. "Let's take a break," Jake suggested, climbing down. She followed him to the water's edge, where the air was cooler and filled with the sounds of nature awakening in the twilight. Leela dipped her toes in the river, feeling alive for the first time in months. "I used to come here with my family," Jake said, staring out at the water. Leela asked, sensing the depth of his sorrow. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lost him in an accident. Car crashed on a rainy night." The shadow of grief hung heavy in the air, and Leela felt an unexpected bond forming between them. "I'm so sorry," she said, her heart aching for the pain he carried. The fireflies began to dance above the grass as dusk settled over them. They sat in silence, sharing their wounds in the quiet space between them. They didn't want to be just two lonely souls on the road. They were searching for healing. With time, their conversation flowed more freely. Leela shared snippets of her life, how she had made choices that spiraled out of control, leading to broken relationships and self-imposed isolation. She talked about the fear that had grown inside her, how she had felt trapped by her own decisions. "Sometimes," Jake said, gazing into the fire, "we let our pasts overshadow our presents." His words struck deep, resonating with her fears. She had been running for so long that the thought of stopping felt terrifying. Days turned into weeks as they journeyed together, laughter weaving into their conversations like a golden thread. With each shared meal, each light-hearted moment, something began to grow, a bond strengthened by secrets revealed and a shared understanding of life's fragility. But the weight of their past still loomed overhead. One rainy evening, while huddled together under the tarp of their makeshift shelter, Jake broke the silence. Leela replied, wanting to reassure him, but anxiety twisted in her gut. "Are you going to leave?" His voice trembled, and she could see the vulnerability beneath his tough exterior. Leela's heart sank. I don't know," she admitted. "I thought that maybe I could stay, but what if you find out who I really am?" Jake shifted, his expression softening. "You're not a burden, Leela. We're all just trying to figure things out." His words wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace, and she felt a surge of gratitude swell within her. Here was someone who understood, who didn't judge. Yet doubts started to take root. Leela felt the urge to run kick in again, a remnant of the fear that had haunted her for so long. What if she hurt him in the end? What if her chaos turned his life upside down? One day, while passing through a small town, they stopped at a diner to grab some food. The familiar smell of coffee and pancakes filled the air, grounding them momentarily. As they entered, Leela's gaze landed on a familiar face, her ex-boyfriend, Mark. Her heart dropped. Panic surged through her, a tide of emotions crashing against her resolve. She ducked behind Jake, nearly spilling her coffee. Mark shouted, recognition dawning. Jake stepped protectively in front of her, sensing the fear coursing through Leela. "She's with me," he asserted, staring Mark down. Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can just run away and start fresh?" Leela's throat tightened. The weight of his words crashed down on her like a wave, the doubt creeping back in. Just when she thought she had found solace, the past clawed back with talons of despair. "Let's go," Jake said firmly, turning toward the door, his protective nature radiating strength. He didn't give her a chance to respond. As they stepped outside, Leela felt the sunlight warm her face, almost soothing the pangs of anxiety within her. Jake glanced at her, concern etched across his features. "No," she admitted, fighting tears. "What if he's right? What if I'll never change?" Jake took her shoulders, grounding her. "Listen to me. You are not the person you were. It's not about your past, it's about what you choose to do now." His words pierced through the fog of doubt. She felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe she wasn't just a runaway. Maybe she could build something new, dream anew. As the days passed, the darkness began to fade slowly but surely. They worked alongside one another, the rhythm of their days melding into a dance of unspoken understanding. Each step forward felt like a triumph. Every shared laugh felt like a new leaf unfurling in the sunlight. But one evening, while sitting around the fire, Leela noticed Jake's gaze drift to the horizon. She asked gently, He hesitated, the shadows of his past creeping back in. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel whole again." Leela shifted closer, feeling the gravity of his words. "You let me in," she pointed out softly. "You're already changing my life." The air crackled with unspoken promises. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, they leaned into that moment, letting the heat of their connection bind them together again. Life continued, and they began to talk about their dreams, sketching out a vision for a future that felt terrifying yet exhilarating. Together they imagined a community, a safe haven for those like them, a place where lost souls could find themselves again, and perhaps love could blossom among the wildflowers. But after several months on the road, a letter arrived that shattered their newfound peace. It had the familiar seal of a place Leela thought she had left behind. Heart sinking, she opened the envelope, scanning the words inside with trembling hands. Jake asked, his brow furrowing with concern. "It's from my past. They found me. They're threatening legal action." Her voice was barely a whisper, reality crashing in like a storm. The weight of her confession hung in the air, heavier than any burden she had faced before. Panic swelled within her as she felt Jake lose a bit of the warmth in his gaze. He began, but she cut him off. "It's just proof I can't escape who I am. I'll ruin everything." Her heart raced, and for a moment she wanted to turn and run. Jake stepped closer, eyes locking onto hers. "You're not a personal failure, Leela. You're a survivor," she cried, the tears spilling over. Jake reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "We'll stand together." In that moment, something shifted. The past that had once felt like a chain began to feel like a second skin, something she could shed with the right support. Leela took a deep breath, feeling the heaviness start to lift, if just a little. With renewed determination, they rallied their makeshift community, sharing her story and seeking support. Together, they drafted a plan, empowering Leela to confront the remnants of her past head-on. As they faced the difficulty together, Leela began to reclaim her voice. Every challenge felt like a mountain climbed, and each victory reaffirmed their bond. With Jake beside her, the weight of her past felt lighter. Weeks turned into months, and with each passing season, Leela and Jake built their dreams into reality. The community flourished, becoming a sanctuary for healing, a testament to resilience. Together, they cultivated not just crops but hope. One evening, as they planted seeds in the soil that had nurtured so many dreams, Leela looked at Jake, gratitude swelling in her heart. "You changed my life," she said softly. He smiled, that familiar glint lighting up his eyes. "And you changed mine." The sun sank low on the horizon, casting a warm glow over their thriving land. Standing hand in hand, they had not just built a community, they had resurrected themselves, transformed by love, resilience, and the unyielding bond they had forged. In that simple moment, as the world began to hum with life around them, they knew just how far they had come. It all started with a chance encounter on a dusty road, a hitching of fate that had blossomed into a shared journey of healing, hope, and everlasting connection. Together, they had changed each other's lives, and in doing so, found the true meaning of home. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the rugged dirt road. A lone figure emerged, standing resolutely at the side, her thumb raised high in a hopeful gesture. Leela's heart raced. It was her last chance. Days of wandering had left her worn and weary, the weight of uncertainty pressing heavily against her chest. Where she came from felt like a distant memory, buried under layers of regret, pain, and lost dreams. She just needed someone to stop, to give her a chance to escape her past. As if answering her unvoiced plea, a wagon rolled into view, pulled by a sturdy brown horse. The driver, a rugged man with sun-kissed skin and deep-set eyes, squinted against the evening light. He slowed the wagon down, pulling the reins with a practiced ease. He called out, his voice gravelly but warm. Leela shouted, her heart leaping as she climbed aboard. "Name's Jake," he said, glancing at her as he started the journey again. "Leela," she replied, feeling an unexpected sense of relief wash over her. Sitting next to him as the wagon rolled forward, she felt the world blur around them, each bump in the road easing her tension just a little bit. Could this be her moment of freedom? Jake asked, his voice cutting through the comfortable silence. "Away," she murmured, glancing at the horizon. The truth felt too heavy. She couldn't risk exposing the scars that lay beneath the surface. He pressed gently, sensing the weight of her unspoken troubles. She considered the question. "More like someone," Leela admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Jake nodded, his expression not one of judgment but of understanding. "We all have our reasons for running," he replied, looking ahead as he maneuvered the wagon down the winding trail. Their conversation flowed like the gentle breeze, and with each mile they covered, Leela felt the strain of her past begin to lighten. The countryside rolled by, golden fields stretching endlessly, and for the first time in a long while she felt hope swirl in her chest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with fiery oranges and deep purples, Jake pulled over beside a babbling creek. "Let's take a break," he suggested, stepping down from the wagon. Leela hesitated but then followed him, eager to stretch her legs. She felt the cool grass beneath her feet as she approached the water, watching the way the sunlight danced across its surface. Jake said, joining her at the water's edge. "It is," Leela agreed, breathing in the refreshing scent of nature. But as she looked at her reflection, she frowned, the shadows of her past creeping back into her mind. Jake asked, noticing the change in her expression. "I'm just thinking," she said, battling the urge to share her burdens. "You don't have to if you're not ready." His voice was inviting, no pressure, just a gentle offer. The way he spoke nudged at her walls, and suddenly she found herself wanting to let him in. "I had a life back home, but it fell apart. I hurt the people I loved the most, and I just..." The words tumbled out, spilling her truth into the evening air. Jake turned to her, his eyes steady but understanding. "I get that. I've lost my family too, an accident, but you can't let the past define you." For a moment, her heart swelled with empathy. Here was a man who knew about loss, who understood pain. As the stars began to emerge, their whispered stories hung in the air, weaving a bond of shared experiences. Days passed, and their journey unfolded like a beautiful tapestry. Leela began to let her laughter seep into the cracks of her heart, each moment spent with Jake weaving them closer together. Together they shared simple meals, exchanged smiles, and felt a connection growing that neither had anticipated. But shadows from the past lingered behind Leela like a specter, always just out of sight. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jake turned to her with a question that sent shivers down her spine. His voice was serious, filled with an intensity she had not experienced before. "Are you running from yourself?" His question echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of how fragile her newfound freedom felt. She whispered, fear creeping into her heart. He pushed gently, leaning closer. "Enough to change, to be the person I want to be," she confessed, the raw truth spilling forth like a broken dam. "You have to allow yourself that grace," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "We're not the mistakes we've made." As their eyes locked, there was an intimacy that transcended words, a silent understanding that bound them together in that moment. Leela felt a flicker of hope ignited in her chest, a soft light breaking through the dark corners of her mind. But just as swiftly as hope arrived, doubt followed. What if she stumbled? What if she fell back into her old habits? One day, as they traveled through a small town, the familiar scent of something drew Leela's attention as they passed a cafe. It was a bakery she used to love, filled with memories of laughter and warmth before everything went awry. Before she could think twice, her feet carried her inside. The smell of freshly baked bread wrapped around her, enveloping her in nostalgia and familiarity. As she stepped to the counter, her heart raced with anxiety. A voice called, a blast from the past. It was Mia, her old friend, and suddenly the weight of her past bore down like a lead weight. Leela breathed, momentarily lost for words. Mia's smile faltered as confusion flitted across her face. "I'm just passing through," Leela stammered, glancing back toward the door. Jake entered behind her, and the moment Mia recognized him, her demeanor shifted. "And you're with him?" Leela felt the walls closing in around her, the pressure overwhelming. "I am not running," she said defensively, but her voice trembled beneath the weight of vulnerability. "Leela, you don't have to hide from me," Mia urged, her voice softening. "You can come back." Jake moved closer, his protective instincts flaring to life. "She's chosen a different path," he said firmly. But Leela's heart raced. The familiar faces, the memories, they all threatened to pull her back. "I can't go back," she whispered, echoing her own fears. As they left the cafe, Jake glanced at her, concern etched on his face. She exploded, the frustration spilling over. "What if I'm never okay?" Jake stopped dead in his tracks, his expression fierce yet caring. "Then we fight against it. You are not alone in this." His words cut through the fog of doubt, igniting something within her. It felt like a lifeline, a tether to hope. "I want to believe that," she said, voice trembling. "Then let's prove it. You're stronger than you know," he encouraged, the conviction in his voice wrapping around her like a warm embrace. With renewed hope, they continued their journey, Leela determined to carve her own path forward. As they passed through small towns and filled their days with laughter and shared dreams, something shifted inside her soul. But deep down, remnants of her old life clung tightly, refusing to fade quietly. One evening, while camping under the stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the horizon. Leela said, breaking the silence. "Of course," Jake replied, gazing into the fire. She asked softly, her heart racing. Jake looked up, surprised by the honesty of the question. "I was, but you've changed that." Leela felt her heart swell. Would she let down the walls? Could she trust him enough to reveal the raw parts of her being? But fear still whispered in her ear, casting shadows over their budding connection. What if she broke him? What if her past infected their future? Yet as they sat together that night, the stars forming a shimmering blanket above them, Leela realized this was a chance she couldn't let slip away. A few weeks later, they found themselves in a small valley, and the moment she saw it, something in her heart surged. Wildflowers dotted the landscape, and the air was perfumed with promise. "This is it," Leela breathed, feeling an electric pulse of excitement. Jake asked, puzzled. "A place where we can build something, a sanctuary." "A home," she declared, eyes glistening with dreams. He replied, reflecting the light she felt. "Together," she affirmed. With determination igniting their souls, they began to lay the groundwork for the future they envisioned. They worked side by side, planting seeds not just in the earth but in each other's hearts. Together, they started to build a sanctuary, a place where healing could bloom in the warmth of friendship, love, and acceptance. Weeks passed, morphing into months, and as the land came alive around them, they began to gather friends, other lost souls seeking hope. Laughter echoed in the fields, meals were shared under the open sky, and joy seeped back into lives once filled with pain. But as fresh blossoms took root, the shadows of Leela's past swirled just beyond the edge of the horizon. One day, stepping inside the barn they had built together, she found an envelope resting on the table. Her heart dropped. It was a letter from the authorities, a final demand for unresolved legal issues tied to her past. Panic surged through her, and she felt her world begin to crumble. She called, voice trembling. The shadows came rushing back, fear clawing at her throat. When he arrived, his expression shifted to one of concern. "This letter, it's about my past. They found me." She tangled her fingers through her hair, feeling trapped once more in a cycle of shame. Jake stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, grounding her in that moment. "Leela, look at me, you've come so far." "But it feels like it could," she said, fighting tears. His voice was firm, filled with conviction. "We face this together, whatever it takes." Staring into his eyes, Leela felt the warmth of his conviction wash over her, pulling her back from the abyss of fear threatening to swallow her whole. She asked, her voice softening. "Always," he vowed. In that moment, Leela squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. Together, they began to form a plan, rallying their community to confront her past, pulling together the strength of friendship and resilience to face what lay ahead. Days turned into weeks as they fought against the tides of anxiety that had threatened to drown them. And with every meeting, every plan they created, her fears began to wane, tempered by the unyielding spirit of solidarity. The more they faced together, the more they began to carve out a destiny that felt within reach. The community rallied around them, showing support. As Leela stepped out of the shadows, she began to reclaim her voice, one powerful word at a time. Months moved forward, and as spring bloomed into summer, the sanctuary thrived, the laughter of children ringing through the air, and the spirit of connection entwined with the deep-rooted friendships they had forged. Standing in the fields, surrounded by the blossoming life they had nurtured together, Leela turned to Jake. "We did it." Jake smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "No, we did it together. You've changed everything for both of us." Leela felt her heart swell, recognizing that what started as a chance encounter had transformed into a shared journey of healing, love, and resilience. They had not only changed each other's lives, but created a beacon of hope in a world filled with darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, soaking the fields in golden light, she realized something profound. Sometimes the road you take to escape isn't about running away, but running towards something beautiful. And it all began with a simple ride on a wagon. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden hues over the expansive plains. A lone wagon creaked along the dusty road, pulled by a sturdy horse, its silhouette stark against the fading light. Inside sat Jake, a rugged farmer with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had been traveling all day, pondering how to keep his family farm afloat amid a relentless drought that threatened everything he had worked for. The landscape around him mirrored his own state of mind, dry, barren, and filled with uncertainty. As the wagon rolled on, his thoughts drifted when suddenly, in the distance, he saw a figure standing at the roadside, waving desperately. The woman appeared frail, her clothes tattered and her hair wild, but there was an undeniable spark in her eyes, a flicker of hope. Something pulled at him, a strange instinct urging him to stop. He pulled the reins, bringing the horse to a halt beside her. He called out, peering down at the stranger. She replied, her voice thick with urgency. "Name's Jake," he introduced himself as she climbed aboard, relief washing over her like a cool breeze on a scorching day. "Leela," she said, finally catching her breath. Jake could see the tension in her shoulders ease just a little. As they started moving again, Leela felt the weight of her past begin to lift. The rhythmic clatter of the wagon wheels felt almost soothing. She looked around at the endless expanse of fields, golden under the fading light. She asked, trying to mask her own fears with simple conversation. "Away from everything," Jake replied, his voice low. "They all say you can't outrun your problems," Leela said quietly, turning to look at him. "True enough," Jake conceded, glancing sideways. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows behind them, Leela felt the attraction of shared burdens. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, weaving together the raw threads of their lives. She found herself revealing bits of her story, the messy entanglements of her past. She spoke of broken relationships, family rifts, and the crushing weight of regret that had driven her to flee. Jake listened, reflecting his own scars and struggles. He shared his battle against debt, his fears of losing not just the farm, but everything his family had worked for. It was like a quiet reckoning unfolding under the wide open sky, where vulnerabilities found solace in shared experiences. But as they journeyed deeper into the night, Leela felt a tightening in her chest. The shadows of her past had not vanished. They lingered, threatening to claw at her newfound comfort. The complex layers of her history loomed like dark clouds overhead, waiting to pour rain on her fragile resolve. Jake asked, breaking through her thoughts. His voice was probing yet sincere. "I made mistakes," Leela replied, swallowing hard. "I hurt people I cared about, and now it feels like." "You're not tied to the past," he said, his voice firm. Leela weighed his words carefully. Could she believe him? Could she leave the ghosts behind? She glanced at him, trying to gauge his sincerity. "Because I'm doing it," Jake replied, his eyes fixed ahead, determination etched into his expression. "I wake up each day knowing I have a chance to change things." The journey continued under a blanket of stars, the night air cool around them. With every passing mile, Leela found herself drawn to Jake in unexpected ways. He was not just a stranger offering her a lift. He was a lifeline, someone who understood the weight of regret while still choosing to press forward. As dawn broke, illuminating the world in soft pastels, they arrived at a small town. The quaint buildings offered a stark contrast to the wide open spaces they had traversed. Jake pulled into a diner, the scent of coffee wafting through the air. "Let's grab breakfast. I'll buy you a meal," he offered, hopping down from the wagon. Leela hesitated, but the thought of food was too tempting. Inside, they settled into a booth, the sound of chatter filling the air. As they enjoyed their breakfast, Jake watched Leela, mesmerized by how the sunlight danced in her hair. There was a resilience about her, a fire burning beneath her exterior. They shared easy laughter, a reprieve from the weight they each carried. But once the meal concluded and they stepped back outside, that familiar tension returned. A couple of familiar faces loitered nearby, and as they got closer, Leela froze. "Mark," she whispered, recognition sinking in. It was her ex-boyfriend, the very person she had fled from. The warmth of the sun felt like ice on her skin, and she turned to Jake, panic written across her features. "We need to go." Before Jake could ask why, she shuffled away, avoiding eye contact, but Mark had spotted her. "Leela," he called, striding toward them with an ease that sent chills down her spine. Mark sneered, his voice edged with mockery. "Just leave me alone," Leela managed, her heart pounding. But Mark moved closer, invading her space. "You think you can just come back and wipe everything clean?" "Let's go," Jake said, stepping in front of Leela. There was a calm strength in his stance, a protective energy that radiated from him. Mark stared at Jake, assessing the situation. "You really think you can save her? Good luck with that," he said with a smirk. Leela felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting, the shadows she thought she had escaped crashing down around her. She could feel moments of her past closing in. In that instant, everything she had fought to leave behind threatened to pull her back into its depths. But Jake stood firm, his eyes locked with hers. "You're stronger than he knows. You don't have to let him control your story." Jake's words pulled her back from the precipice of hopelessness. With a surge of determination, Leela stepped up beside him. "You're wrong, Mark. I'm not broken. I'm rebuilding," she declared, her voice growing stronger, resonating with newfound strength. As they turned to leave, Leela felt the grasp of the past loosening its grip. With each step away from Mark, she felt lighter, unshackled from his judgment. The sunlight warmed her face and she took a deep breath, feeling a spark ignite within her. Back at the wagon, Jake clapped her on the shoulder, pride gleaming in his eyes. "That's the spirit," he said. Feeling emboldened, Leela mounted the wagon with new resolve. Maybe she wasn't defined by her past after all. They continued down the road, the wind whipping through their hair, a sense of freedom enveloping them. As they traveled through stretches of fields and rolling hills, the bond between Leela and Jake blossomed. Leela found herself sharing dreams for the future, hopes she thought had been extinguished. They spoke of creating a community, a safe haven for lost souls like themselves, a place where people could heal together. Jake listened intently, his passion igniting in response. "We could build something beautiful. You don't have to hide anymore," he said. That glimmer of hope began to unfurl within her, and as they drew closer to the land they had envisioned, excitement bubbled up, pushing aside the last remnants of insecurity. Could they really create a sanctuary together? But as they prepared to settle in, Leela still felt unease, a gnawing doubt at the back of her mind. Past encounters swirled around, reminding her of what lay behind her. Would it come back to haunt her? One night under a sky speckled with stars, Leela's dreams felt impossibly close, yet she struggled to grasp them with both hands. She turned to Jake, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "What if I fail?" Jake looked at her, his expression unwavering. "You can't keep looking back. We can't predict the future or control everything. All we can do is take the next step." His words hung in the air, each syllable resonating deep within her. Leela realized then she wasn't alone in this journey. They were allies against the shadows, partners forging ahead into the unknown. But the next day, as they began to work the land, something strange swept through the air. An uneasy feeling settled over Leela, a prickling sensation that something was about to happen. As they trudged through rows of soil, the busyness of the day unfolded laughter, planting seeds and shared moments of joy. But amid all this, Leela felt as though eyes were watching from the tree line. The feeling wouldn't shake off, and dread soon latched onto the fringes of her mind. Then, on the third day of toil and triumph, it came. A vehicle rolled into their makeshift sanctuary, the sound of tires crunching on gravel slicing through the peaceful atmosphere. A wave of anxiety washed over Leela as she spotted the familiar silhouette stepping out. "Mark," she whispered, frozen in place as the past she thought she had escaped stood before her. He sneered, a smirk curling at the corners of his lips. "I told you, Leela." Fear gripped her heart, Jake stepped forward, protective and fierce. "You need to leave." But Mark brushed him off, stepping closer to Leela, invading her space like a shadow creeping back in. "Do you really think you can build this life? You'll always be the girl who ran." That crunching feeling of dread deepened, and for a moment all the strength Jake had given her faltered. Leela said, her voice shaking. But Mark's words hung in the air, clinging to her fears. In that moment, Leela had to make a choice. Would she let the echoes of her past drag her back into darkness? As Mark stepped closer, Leela felt an overwhelming surge of defiance ignite inside her. She turned to Jake, the steadfast strength of his presence bolstering her resolve. And in that charged moment, Leela stepped forward, her voice steady and resolute. "No more. I am not defined by my past." The choice hung in the air, a choice for freedom, for self-worth, for strength. In that moment, Leela just had to hope things would unfold as they were destined to. And as she faced Mark, the realization struck her. Some journeys weren't just about running away. They were about standing tall and embracing who you truly were. But just when she thought she had found her power, the storm brewing in the distance broke. As thunder rumbled overhead and shadows swept across the land, Leela's heart raced with uncertainty. Would this moment define her, or would it lead to an even greater storm? And with the winds picking up, everything she had fought for hung in the balance, waiting to be determined by a single moment, a single choice, in the standoff between past and present.